Conrad Elkins, a mysterious man, appeared on modern streets, seemingly ordinary yet extraordinary. His enigmatic personality, impossible to define, was like a puzzle. I, a chemistry student, was struck by his unusual features, which didn't fit any known ethnic stock. His age was also a mystery, with a smooth face and an expression that hinted at something ancient. Elkin's modish attire and delicate build didn't draw attention, but his remarkable features, like his large, luminous eyes and flexible hands, did. His habitual expression was unreadable, giving the impression of profound wisdom and aesthetic refinement. I was intrigued and decided to learn more about him. We met frequently in libraries and museums, where he studied modern science, archaeology, and sexology. His motives were unclear, but I sensed a fraternal interest in my own studies. Others found him fascinating, but knew little about him, as he was extremely taciturn. One day, he approached me at the Natural History Museum, discussing lost civilizations and the potential for New York to become a legendary, forgotten city. I was surprised by his knowledge of my thesis on cosmic rays and their potential as a source of power. Our acquaintance grew rapidly, with him visiting my laboratory and me visiting his modest lodgings. Despite our growing friendship, I remained ignorant about Elkin's past. He seemed older and intellectually more evolved, with an air of impossible seniority. I regarded him with awe, as if he were an elder with omniscient knowledge. His rooms were noncommittal, but his books revealed him to be a linguist. Our discussions were marked by his intellectual impersonality, vast range of information, and boundless reserves. He was skeptical of current medicine and surgery, and his views on electricity and astronomy were unconventional. Elkins showed interest in my research, but seemed to view it as elementary. Here is a summary of the text, shortened to 1,000 characters, while maintaining the storyline. Hugh is fascinated by Conrad Elkins, a mysterious man with an unusual ethnic distinction. Despite growing admiration, Hugh finds Elkins incomprehensible and alien. One day, Elkins reveals that he's from 15,000 AD and has come to the 20th century to discover the secret of sex determination, which was lost in the Dark Ages. Humanity in his era is threatened by an overpreponderance of male children. Elkins invites Hugh to accompany him back to his time, promising to explain the mysteries of his world. Hugh accepts, awed by the opportunity. Cronus Alkin, a man from 15,000 AD, visits Conrad Elkins in New York. Cronus brings ancient coins and a tunic from his time, which he wears to travel back in time. He plans to take Elkins with him on a world tour. They travel to the Catskills, where Cronus shows Elkins an anti-gravitational device that allows them to climb a cliff. They reach a time machine, a spindle-shaped vessel designed for air and ether travel. Cronus explains the machine's intricate machinery and introduces Elkins to his new identity, Huno Paskin. They dress in ancient attire and prepare for time travel. Cronus activates the machine, and they rise above the cliffs. He sets the controls for atmosphere and ether flight, and they travel to 15,000 AD. Elkins experiences a terrifying sensation as they enter the fourth dimension. When they arrive, Cronus awakens Elkins, and they exit the machine. They find themselves on Cronus, country estate near Jarma, the capital of Achameria, built on the ruins of New York City. The climate is subtropical, and weather conditions are controlled. Cronus shows Elkins his home, a shining edifice with aircraft, gardens, and fields of unknown vegetables. He introduces Elkins to his cousins, Altus and Oron, and the Martian overseer, Trog, who manages the Venusian slaves. Cronus took me to his estate, where I witnessed a terrifying scene. Two men, including Cronus' cousin Oron, and a Martian overseer named Trog, were fighting off a horde of bestial creatures from Venus. The creatures were armed with clubs and stones, and Cronus used his projector to defeat them. One of the men, Altus, was badly hurt, but Cronus used a device that emitted a green light to heal his wound. Cronus introduced me to Oron and Trog, and explained that the Venusians were a menace to humanity, breeding rapidly and outnumbering humans 5-1. He believed they needed only organization to become a major threat. We had a meal together, and Cronus spoke about his time voyage and his concerns about sharing the knowledge with others. He also told me about the world's motivations, which were focused on conquering remote knowledge, creating art, and enjoying intellectual and aesthetic sensations. Cronus explained that people lived for an average of 300-400 years, and that crime was rare. He also mentioned that half of their commerce was interplanetary, but they weren't a commercial people. Instead, they relied on slave labor on large plantations. Cronus showed me his laboratory, where he performed incredible feats of atomic transformation and microscopic analysis. Over the next few weeks, I learned the language and was given access to a vast library. Cronus and Oron instructed me in their ways, and I saw incredible marvels on the estate. In a futuristic era, I found myself transported to a world beyond my own time. Cronus, a kind host, showed me ancient relics from New York and other cities, which filled me with nostalgia for my own period. Altus, a wounded man, recovered fully, and I learned about the savage-looking Venusians who worked on the plantation with a sullen air. They were cannibalistic by nature and had been brought to Earth as slaves. The Martians, who came to Earth as traders, were philosophical and addicted to a powerful drug called ganultin. Cronus and his cousins used radio and television to stay in touch with the world, and I saw incredible scenes from Mars, Venus, and the Moon. News of daily outbreaks by Venusian slaves and mysterious sabotage spread, with some suspecting Martian involvement. A bizarre mineral plague, the black rot, emerged in Jarma, devouring buildings and spreading destruction. Cronus, a renowned chemist, was called to study the rot, and I accompanied him to Jarma. We attended a conclave of scientists where I suggested using radium to combat the plague. Cronus presented my idea, and it received great favor. The assembly approved the trial, and work began on preparing radium to arrest the black rot. With radium, the plague was soon under control, and the people of Jarma and Achameria were relieved. During our stay, Cronus and I were guests in a fine building set apart for visiting scientists. In the year 15,000 AD, I found myself in the midst of a futuristic city called Jarma, surrounded by incredible luxury and technology. I was amazed by the baths, beds, and aerial music that seemed to come from nowhere. The people of this era had mastered natural laws, and their quiet confidence was impressive. I was honored for my contribution to retarding the black rot, but I felt it was just a fortunate accident. Cronus, a kind and humble host, helped me avoid publicity and introduced me to the wonders of this new world. While he attended to business, I took long walks through the city, marveling at the unfamiliar sights and sounds. The city was peaceful, with strange vehicles and air vessels moving silently above. The people wore colorful costumes, and I noticed a scarcity of women who were valued and protected due to their rarity. Polyandry was common, and romantic love was unknown. As I explored, I encountered a Martian quarter with exotic architecture and strange odors. I felt a sense of unease, but also curiosity. One afternoon, I ventured out later than usual and heard rumors of fresh revolts. As twilight fell, I realized I had forgotten my electronic projector and felt a sense of menace. Suddenly, 7 or 8 Venusians attacked me, armed with clubs. I fought back, but they overpowered me, and I fell unconscious. When I came to, I was bound and surrounded by Venusians dancing around a fire. Another man, Joss Taller, was beside me, also bound. We conversed quietly, and I learned that he was the owner of the Venusian slaves who had revolted against him. He suspected a secret understanding between the Venusians and Martians, who might be smuggling deadly organisms to Earth. As we waited, helpless, the fire died down, revealing a bed of glowing coals, and we feared the worst. In a dark, eerie atmosphere, Joss Taller and I were surrounded by beast-like Venusians, their eyes gloating with hunger as they prepared to throw us onto a fire. But just as all hope seemed lost, a light appeared in the sky, an Achamerian air vessel, descending rapidly towards us. The vessel landed, and several men emerged, armed with heat ray generators that killed the Venusians. Our rescuers, led by Cronus Alkin, freed us from our bonds. As we flew back to Jarma, Cronus explained that a worldwide revolt of the slaves had begun, with Asia and Australia already in their hands. The Achamerians were fighting back with heat ray generators, but new perils had emerged, plagues loosed by the Venusians, assisted by the Martians. Insect swarms, gases, and vegetable molds were spreading rapidly, threatening to make the world uninhabitable for humans. Cronus told us that he had located us using a nocturnal televisor, which allowed him to see in the dark. He had chartered an air vessel and gathered companions to rescue us. As we returned to Jarma, we learned that Oron had been killed, Trog had disappeared, and Altus had fled in an air vessel. Cronus treated my wounds with a green ray, relieving my pain. We sat for hours, discussing the events of the day and receiving fresh reports. The situation was dire, with new plagues emerging daily. Cronus decided that we must retrieve his time machine from his estate, which was under attack by the Venusians. I protested, but Cronus insisted that I return to my own age, leaving the war to the Acamerians. We flew to the estate, seeing devastation and blight along the way. The Venusians had fired the house and were approaching the aerodrome. Cronus steered the atomic monoplane towards the slaves, and we used heat ray projectors to defend ourselves. We managed to retrieve the time machine, but the world was on the brink of chaos. In the aftermath of the battle, Cronus, Hugh, and Altus returned to Jarma. The time vessel was safely stored, and the monoplane was left in Altus' care. As they flew over the plantation, they saw the destruction caused by the Venusians. Cronus remained calm, but Hugh could sense his sadness. The Martians had declared war, using their zero ray to devastating effect. The people of Acameria were fighting back, but the situation was dire. A battle raged in the Martian quarter of Jarma, with the Martians holding their own. Despite the danger, the people of Acameria remained calm, thanks to their advanced mental evolution and philosophically detachment. They were prepared to face their fate with dignity. As the situation worsened, a new plague emerged, the Yellow Death, a microorganism that made the air unbreathable for humans. The only solution was for humanity to retreat to the Arctic Circle, and eventually to the asteroids. Cronus, Hugh, and Altus prepared to leave Jarma, joining the mass exodus of humans fleeing the planet. Cronus predicted that the Martians would soon enslave the Venusians. As they flew north, Hugh admired the courage and organization of the people of Acameria. He had grown attached to Cronus and the people he had come to know. Eventually, they reached the polar regions, where humanity was establishing a temporary base. From there, they would travel to the asteroids, which would become their new home. Before departing, Cronus instructed Hugh on how to use the time machine to return to his own era. Hugh was filled with sorrow and excitement as he watched the last of humanity flee the planet. Cronus's face was unreadable, but he smiled at me with a hint of sadness. "It's time for me to leave, and for you too," he said. "Farewell, Hugh. We won't meet again. Remember me and the fate of humanity when you return to your time." He shook my hand, boarded the space liner with Altus, and they waved goodbye as the ship took off into space. I felt a pang of regret for not joining them, but I returned to my time vessel, started the engine, and began my journey through the ages.